Welcome to another episode of Truly Bizarre, the podcast that delves into the darkest corners of true crime and the paranormal. In this episode, we're bringing you 3 terrifying stories of stalking, breaking, and entering, and hauntings in apartments. These are stories that will make you question your own sense of security and make the hair on the back of your neck stand on end. So, lock your doors, turn on the lights, and join us as we explore the truly bizarre. Paradise Lost. Before I graduated high school, I knew that I wanted to live in Paradise Apartments. Although I was initially a little naive, I was attracted to the complex many amenities and was drawn in by their affordability. When it was time for me to buy my own place, I sublet their only apartment and moved in. The apartment was not as nice as I thought. It was old and had been remodeled, so it had all the usual plumbing problems and thin walls. It was also not the safest area of town. While I was mostly an online student, I did have one class that I met in person twice per week at 8 a.m. I'm a bit of an introvert, so I stayed home most of the day. I did go shopping, but I also went to class and made time for my boyfriend after work. My apartment was 600 square feet. I was the only person living there. Things had a way to grow legs and walk away. 2 kittens were my companion at the time, and I blamed them for everything disappearing. One thing that was always recurring was the fact that my underwear box would be found out and sitting on my bedroom floor when I was in class. Instead of a dresser, I used an IKEA shelf and some IKEA boxes to store my designated clothes, socks, underwear, pajamas, etc. Although I could swear I had put the underwear away before getting dressed for class, I just assumed it was because I forgot due to having to get up at 6 a.m. and being so focused on getting there on time. Paranoidly, I began to believe that my laundry was also disappearing. My favorite clothes would go into the laundry basket and then never return with clean clothes. My boyfriend called me towards the end of that semester to inform me that his roommate had locked him out of their apartment. He asked me if I could quickly run over to give him access to my apartment. Before I left, I remembered that I had turned on every light in my apartment. Since I lived on a very tight budget, I made it a habit to turn off all lights before I left. However, my boyfriend lives only 5 minutes away, so I knew that I would be back in no time. It was only 15 minutes later that I returned home. As I could see through the blinds, I knew something was wrong. I called my boyfriend and he drove to meet me. We opened the door and entered. All the lights in my apartment were out. I thought I had experienced a power cut and turned on the main light. My boyfriend went through the apartment and found no one there. However, someone had gone through the whole place and turned off all the lights at every switch. This included my lizard's basking lamp, which I had left on assignment but had now closed it. I called emergency maintenance and explained that someone was in my apartment. They had to have used the key as there was no evidence of forced entry. The manager called me back and said that I was imagining things. He also suggested that I might have forgotten to turn off the lights before I left. I assured him that I would not have shut off the computer or turned off a lizard light because someone had entered my apartment. I explained to him that I was very worried because this person clearly had the key to my apartment. Either they were a tenant or a guest. I asked them if they had changed the locks after the tenant left. They said they did. The manager suggested that it might have been a friend playing a prank on me. He was the second person I had given keys. My boyfriend, who had his key to my apartment, locked in his apartment with the same key ring that holds his apartment key, and my mom, who lived 3 hours away, were the only people I gave keys to. They would not have pranked me in any way. Finally, the manager agreed to send someone immediately to replace the lock for my peace of mind. My concern was that the lock had been changed by someone on staff, as they were the only ones with keys. The manager claimed that the keys were in a safe that required a personal code to track who took which keys and when. This code was used in an office equipped with security cameras. My locks were changed, but I was skeptical that they would be of any benefit. There were 2 maintenance workers at the complex, one older gentleman who seemed less skilled than me and one younger man with a scruffy mustache that gave me a bad feeling. He was the one I suspected. The manager told me that I would get a new counter for my kitchen within 3 days of moving in when I first moved in. After waiting for them to come, I was completely forgetful about my kitchen stuff. I was sitting in my living area when a scruffy maintenance man walked in. I had not been given notice that he would be coming. He claimed he was coming to replace my countertop. He took 2 days to install a small piece of the counter. I heard the door open a few weeks later as I was getting out of the shower. I called out just 1 minute. I ran to grab my clothes. 2 seconds later, the door opened and I had to close it, still wrapped in a towel, in order to stop him from entering. Although he claimed that he didn't hear me calling out, I was skeptical. I can't recall what excuse he used to come in. I also found another note from him stating that he came in, though it didn't give a reason, that he would not let my cats out. He also wrote a note about how cute my third cat was, except I didn't own a third cat. I had a photo of my childhood cat on the IKEA shelf in my bedroom where I kept my clothes. I then went to the office to request that they make a note in mind that I, A, wanted at least 24-hour notice before entry was made, and B, wanted to be available for any future entry. It all made sense now that I was certain that someone was entering my apartment secretly. Things started to move around in my apartment not long after the surprise maintenance visits had stopped. He was also present on site every day. Everyone on staff lived in paradise, so that he could know when I arrived and went. He had probably sneaked in many times. He had a lot of small souvenirs to steal. He could have come in during my sleep. After that night, when the lights were out, I installed my own lock on the front door. However, I was still unsure if the apartment was secure. With the help of my parents, I purchased a condo and sublet the apartment. Then I moved. Around the same time, I got my first job in an apartment complex. My mom visited me to move my stuff in the last days before I went. My mom was alone at home and I was attending a class. She saw the maintenance man trying to gain my key. He said that he was there to paint her front door. She demanded to know more. He didn't give me a notice and he didn't have any paint or other supplies. He could wait until I moved out, she said. A few years later, the owner of Paradise Apartments approached me while I was working at OK Apartments in another town. Shopping is when employees from an apartment complex take a tour of another apartment complex in the pretense of looking for information. To make sure that you are doing a good job, your management company can perform the tour. A shopper would always tell you certain things, such as asking specific questions like, is it safe here? I'm a felon. Can I live here? These questions required specific answers. They were difficult to understand and too flexible about what they were interested in. They were open to all layouts and would move in when they wanted. The man seemed too wealthy and old to be considering an apartment. We were more geared towards people with lower incomes. He asked me if I had any thoughts on other apartment buildings in the area, and I mentioned Paradise. Normally, I wouldn't be critical of other complexes. I prefer to show them the positives about our community. But I confess that I wasn't the best person for the question because I had probably given Paradise a poor review over the past 5 years. He asked me for more details. I explained that my apartment was broken into and I believed it was someone from their maintenance staff. He revealed that he was Paradise's owner and was very disturbed that I had experienced this. He wanted me to give him a detailed description of the maintenance man. He assured me it was past and I was happy to forget about it. However, he insists on calling Paradise manager, still the same guy, to ask him via speakerphone if there were any problems with their maintenance staff in the year that I lived there. He said yes, pointing out that a young man had been arrested multiple times for breaking into a single woman's apartment. The owner was happy to tell me that the issue had been resolved. He also asked if I would change my review. I said no, because none of that changed the fact that I had experienced it. It actually confirmed what I suspected. As a leasing agent for many years, I have learned a lot about how complexes can cut corners in order to save money and time. My experience shows that many complexes didn't switch out locks if the tenant is good, and that some did not require background checks for employees, even though they required them for tenants. Vendors and maintenance were often given keys at random, and employees often received master keys that could open all doors. The striped shirt stalker. I was about 7 years old. My brother was about 10. It was well past our bedtime when our mom woke up off the couch to put us to bed. Our dad worked construction out of town back then, so it was often just us three at the house for weeks at a time. Up the stairs and to the immediate right was our parents' bedroom. Going left puts you in the middle of a hallway. Taking another left down that hallway led to my brother's room. The opposite end was my room, which was also across the hall from our upstairs bathroom. At either end of the hallway are windowed doors we always kept locked and rarely used. The door on my end led to a balcony overlooking our front yard, and the door on my brother's end opened to our back porch. The house kind of leans into a small hill. My brother and mom both had a habit of waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. I only knew this because I was always a light sleeper and they just couldn't help flushing with the door wide open. This night, however, my brother stopped on his way to his room and came back towards the bathroom. I'm going to try to pee before I go to bed. The past few nights I've been too afraid to walk to the bathroom. I keep seeing a man wearing stripes at the end of the hallway. I don't know if my mom wrote it off as my brother telling ghost stories to try to scare me or if she was already half asleep and didn't catch it, but she didn't react at all to my brother's confession. I, on the other hand, was terrified by it. The fear of seeing a ghost like that at the end of the hallway or through the windows is the reason I started running from the stairs to my bedroom at night. Years later, when I was about 18, my mom and I were having a conversation in her car about a dog we had for a very short time when I was little. We were sharing stories about Max's tendency towards destroying my shoes and other unruly behaviors when my mom blurted out, "Do you remember that time I opened the front door for the cops and Max ran inside to the kitchen and started tearing open that big bag of dog food we had?" This really caught me by surprise because in all the years I lived in that house, we never once called the cops. We're a gun owner family in a quiet, rural neighborhood. I asked her what she was talking about, and she looked equally surprised as if she had just revealed something by accident. "Oh, that's right. I never told you because you were too young at the time. One night, I woke up hearing noises outside my window, and when I looked, I saw a man staring into my bedroom." She went on to describe how turning on the lights caused him to take off running, and how she grabbed my dad's pistol before calling the cops. I can't remember all the details I gave them when they showed up. Tall white male, wearing a striped shirt and jeans, short dark hair. Something like that. They said it matched the description of a man they were looking for in the area. It turns out he had escaped from jail on a murder charge. Now, I know it sounds so obvious hearing those two stories back to back, but it wasn't until a few years ago, in my mid-20s, that I pieced together that my brother had unknowingly warned us about a murderer who spent multiple nights casing our home. The intruder in the attic. I was renting a house here in Northern California a few years back. It was located just outside of the suburbs. It was the ideal balance of being close to neighbors, but still having enough space. It was dark at night, especially when there were clouds or no street lights. I didn't mind it though. On dark nights, it made my tiny house seem even more charming. Midwinter was the day I returned from work. It was cloudy, so I only saw my front porch light and headlights lit. As I got out of the car, I smelled cigarette smoke. It was strange, as I hadn't ever smelled it around the house before. I didn't notice anyone, so I went inside. I was tired after just finishing a shift that included overtime. It wasn't even 7, so I decided to shower and call it quits. A while later, I woke up to find that there was a sound in my house. My friend would often stop by my house to use my bathroom after work, so I didn't worry. I gave him my spare key so that he could come by even though I was not home. I didn't hear my phone ring, so he would text me every day to let me know. To check if my friend had texted me, I reached for my phone from my bedside table. I was blinded by the bright light coming from my phone's number pad and screen. This was before smartphones had light sensors that could dim the screen in darkness. My phone was so bright I could use it to be a flashlight. I could see that the phone was 9 or so, but couldn't tell if there was an unread message. I put down my phone and called my friend. After a few seconds of silence, I heard someone running down the basement of my house. I jumped out of bed and ran towards the closet. Before I opened the door, they were already on the stairs. The house had 3 bedrooms upstairs. There were 2 bedrooms on each side of the hallway, the one I was in, and 1 spare. In the end, there was a bathroom. Both the bedroom doors were closed, but the bathroom door was open. I heard someone in my house thunder down my hallway, past my door, and into the bathroom. It was a great thing. I was able to get enough time to reach the attic through the ceiling of my closet, and then lift myself up. When the person returned from the bathroom, I was just starting to get up. My bedroom door opened and my feet barely reached the ceiling when it burst. I heard footsteps coming into my bedroom and then stopped. They didn't see me in the room and ran to the hallway. The other room was empty except for boxes and weights in the corner. I also had a table that I used to paint my miniature models. They decided that if anyone was hiding in my bedroom, it would be there because they ran back into my room and switched on the light. The closet door was opened just a moment later. I was just a foot away from the access, so I could stop them from climbing up. From my vantage point, I could only see their knees. They were wearing worn work boots and dirty blue jeans with frayed sleeves. After looking into the closet for a while, they moved away. I heard a loud crash coming from my bedroom, followed by an angry and frustrated scream. The most disturbing part of the incident was that shriek. This reminded me a lot of my stepfather, who used to scream when he lost his temper. He was eventually admitted to a mental institution for several mental disorders, which led to violent and erratic tendencies. The man who was in my house ran down the stairs. As furniture was thrown about, I heard clattering and crashes. I remained in the attic, crouching. I forgot my phone and couldn't climb down the attic without his hearing. The noises stopped after a while. I started counting slowly. I reached 1,000 and decided that it was safe to descend the stairs and call the police. When I walked out of the closet, the first thing that I saw was the fact that an intruder had turned my bed upside down. In an effort to find me, I suppose. After he had walked out of the closet was the loud sound I heard. I couldn't locate my cell phone, so I went to the line beside the bed and called the police. I waited in my bedroom until they called from downstairs. Although the first floor was messy, I expected it to be so. The sofa was flipped over and chairs had been moved. All my books, photos, and other knickknacks were scattered across the floor. All the canned and boxed foods from the kitchen were thrown out of their cupboards. The only thing that was missing, however, was a knife from the wooden block in my kitchen. The police inspected the entire house. The police found that the side door was opened by a crowbar. The police also found some cigarette butts along the fence line. They also found foil and an empty pen tube. When I returned home, I realized that he was probably out smoking a cigarette. The evidence was collected by the police, and they told me to stay with my family or friends and fix that door as soon as possible. I chose to not sleep. I moved a shelf to block the door and then spent the next few hours cleaning up. I used to go to the window with my flashlight and light it along the fence line. The police did find the foil and cigarette butts. I didn't see any. The door was fixed the next day and motion lights were installed at my back and sides. I connected a telephone cable to the attic and installed a landline. I didn't want to be left up there without a cell phone. However, nothing else happened in that house. It remained there for 3 more years and I never had another incident. Another precaution was to practice getting out of bed, climbing up into the attic, and going in my closet as quietly and quickly as possible. Even though I had to stop when I moved, I still practiced. However, I now go to the crawl space behind the closet and not the attic. I try to not think about what might have happened if I was a little slower in getting to the attic, or if he hadn't gone to the bathroom at the end. That's it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Truly Bizarre. We hope you enjoyed today's terrifying stories. If you want to hear more exclusive stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your favorite shows. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel too, where we'll be posting extra content. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the truly bizarre.